Morning, everyone. Welcome to this speaker spotlight session. My name's Conor Heaney. I'm the president at CXC Global EMEA. I'm delighted to be joined today by Brenda Monaghan, who is the EMEA Programme Manager for Contingent Labour for Medtronic. I've had the pleasure of working and knowing Brenda now for the last 8 years. And this is our second time doing this at SIA. We did it last in 2024. And Brenda's going to bring us up to some changes in our program, some really positive events there. But we really wanted today, folks, to be practical and for you guys to be able to take some actions around global expansion, some of the pitfalls, some of the challenges, but also the opportunities and how to get the stakeholder buy-in that's absolutely crucial to program success. Brenda, how are you doing?
Good.
Excellent. Well, welcome. Welcome to you. Brenda, just for the benefit of our audience, do you want to just give a bit of background on your program and you and what you do in Medtronic?
Yeah, so nice to meet you all. Nice small group today.
Yeah.
I'm Brenda Monaghan. I'm a program manager for Medtronic, which is one of the largest, maybe the largest medical device company in the world. So we make life-saving, what's the word?
That's
Stents, everything. So anybody who knows somebody who might, everyone knows somebody who might have a stent. So, at some stage, it's a really, really nice company to work for. We put patients first in everything that we do. And part of that, then we run a contingent labour program internal. So it was an MSP about 9 years ago, and we moved the whole program in-house. So we are currently in about 12, 15 countries, and we're on a global expansion journey at the moment. So
Thanks, Brenda. And I think for anyone who's familiar with global expansions or considering it, I think it's fair to say that it's doable, it's possible, but one probably shouldn't be too overly ambitious in terms of the amount of countries that you should be thinking about. So Brenda's going to just give us some background on that in a second. But Brenda, since we last were on stage 2 years ago, what's changed in your program over the last 2 years?
So I think the main thing that's changed is visibility. So we were always trying to sell the program. We know what we do. We know why we do it. The compliance piece, everything that everybody talks about, we know we have a team of experts, very, very solid. And then all of a sudden it's just blown up because we have C-suite executives looking at us from a finance perspective, and the pace that they want information and they want it to grow at is extortionate. So, you're kind of like, okay, well, how are we going to do this now? We don't have an MSP, we need resources. So there's that constant, I suppose, pace that everybody is pushing you to move at. So that's the biggest change I've seen. It's what we wanted, but it's kind of be careful, for what you wish for.
And
You know?
exactly. You got the buy-in, but with the buy-in comes the expectation.
Absolutely. They're like, yeah, I want this. We want to know everybody outside of our Medtronic employees. We want to know where everybody is, how much they cost, whether they sit under an SOW. They don't care.
Yeah. But they want to know the
They
answer.
want the answers. Yeah.
And they want it yesterday.
Yeah.
And Brenda, again, just focusing on what's changed since we last spoke, has there been anything that surprised you over the last couple of years that you've went, oh my God, well, you hadn't expected this, or that's a bit of a Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they're punched in the mouth moment?
Yes. So I think the change management, and I've always hated change management.
Yeah.
Like I've worked in HR for years. It is the most important piece of the whole lot. You have your processes, you have your VMS, you know how it all works, you know where the people are, you're trying to roll it out. But then you have stakeholders, hiring managers, you've got finance, maybe HR in different countries that have just been doing it their own way for a very long time. And you really, you have to put so much time and effort into that. And it's not quantifiable. You can't, you can't say, oh, I saved that money when I spent 4 weeks doing trainings and, bringing everybody in, or, all the fluffy stuff, but it's not fluffy because
Yeah.
it's really necessary.
Yeah, agreed. And
Yeah.
I think when we last met, Brenda, we were talking about the change management and the communications and winning the hearts and minds. And I think that's so critical when you're rolling out a program globally. So, Brenda, we're going to touch on global expansion here. And again, we're going to give our practical insights and experience, right? Because you're sitting in the seat. You've seen how it can work. You've seen how it can go wrong. But do you mind just talking about how many countries you're in now since we last met? I think you're in 8 countries, Brenda, is that correct?
We added on 8 countries.
8 countries.
So we were very solid in like the US, Puerto Rico, Ireland, even the Netherlands. And then in the last year and a half, we've added on 8 countries. So, and that's not an easy task. In the last year, we got like 3.6 million in savings by doing that. By internally renegotiating rates and, bringing CXC in when you need them. But, we really did. And the thing with, you say 8 countries, I've heard people saying we're going global, we're going to roll out 30 countries. And I'm just sitting there with my mouth open going, how are they going to do it? Because these countries, for example, France, which we're looking at the moment, that has 4 manufacturing sites and 1 commercial site. So like all of those sites have different systems, different finance systems. It's not all just one way, because Medtronic, acquired a lot of different businesses over the years. So some of them are still, they're not on SAP. They're not, it's not easy. No. And then they have suppliers. So I'll give an example with France, like there's 6 direct labor suppliers for like these 4 small enough sites. And then there's like 15 indirect suppliers. And they're all charging a fortune. So that's how we get our savings. But it's work. Like it's actual. It's a lot of detail. It's a lot of work. Your team, you're expecting everybody to get in there and renegotiate and, bring them onto the program. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's great advice though, Brenda. Like I know from speaking to some of the SIA council members on Monday night, the topic of global expansion has come up. And I know even from some of our other clients here in Europe and globally that there's a big focus in global expansion. And to your point, Brenda, some of our customers are talking about going into 30 countries over the space of a year. And we're trying to say, listen, we love the fact that you're ambitious. It's good to be ambitious, but some of the complexities can't be overlooked, right? And these things take time from a cultural perspective. I think what Brenda's mentioned there around France and other countries in particular, every site or every location has different processes, systems, ways of working, and the change management and the communications around that is obviously paramount. And if you fail to get that right and fail to prepare around that, then the program's likely to fail because you're starting on the back foot. And I think, Brenda, from our discussions, to really win the hearts and minds, I think it's so important to get out there into the countries and meet the key stakeholders, whether it's the local managing director or CEO right across the stakeholder group, because I think if you can get that buy-in, your chances of success are much higher. Aligned to the discovery work and digging into the processes and seeing how the processes, well, are they documented? Can they be moved or migrated as well?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that, Brenda?
Yeah. So I'll give 2 examples on that. So we went live in India. And we have a vendor neutral program. So for indirect labor. So, no direct selling allowed, did the trainings, everything. They're all still coming in on site and meeting with hiring managers and having a great time. And, the guy that we hired over there is like, is this not allowed? And I'm like, no. And like, aside from going there and saying, you guys need, so, there's a process, there's that's the whole change management piece. But another country we went live in was Czechia, which was fabulous. Everything was going really smooth. The systems were working, everything. And I was like, this is too good to be true. And then we got an escalation. And of course, the escalation was that we did our training in Easter week. Now, they were working.
Yes.
we didn't give them enough notice. We gave them 2 weeks notice and we did the training. They were working, but they were disgusted that we would do it in that week. Now, you would never know that that was going to be an issue. I don't know where that would ever even be written somewhere that, that you could potentially insult people. We had actually taken overtime off these. And I thought that was going to be the escalation because we don't allow overtime with our indirect labour. Direct labour manufacturing, yes, we do. But as a cost saving effort, we just say no overtime allowed. Your contingents should not need to work overtime. If they're that good, you need to convert them. So I thought that was going to be the escalation. Not a word about it. So, yeah.
But it's there cultural nuances that
Absolutely.
you really need to dig
And it
into.
obviously meant an awful lot to them. It
Yes.
didn't really mean anything to us, but it meant a lot to them.
That's brilliant, Brenda.
Yeah.
So Brenda, one of the things that we talked about and want to talk about is just around compliance. From your perspective, Brenda, how do compliance requirements differ in reality versus how organizations assume they will?
So I think a lot of companies think if you have your system in, you have your contract signed, you have your framework in place, that compliance is done. Tick that box. But the reality is it's in the everyday. It's in the every single day, hiring people, managing them. I think IR35 is a very good example of that because really and truly, only the experts in this area or people who are dealing with it every day understand it. But your hiring managers, you have to work on them every day and say, no, hold on a second. Here's the process. We have a very good process for it. It's simple, but we still make sure that they do it. But then they go off and under an SOW or something.
Well, we're gonna touch on this.
We're looking forward to talking about the SOW piece in a minute. And Brenda, we discussed it at length in the run up to today's session around the vendor management platforms or systems and how they can obviously help expand globally. But one of the things that you mentioned, Brenda, and I'm inclined to agree with you, is that perhaps the clients are ahead of where the VMSs are at in certain countries. And I think you wanted to explain some of the issues and challenges to be aware of if you're expanding into Italy, both from a technology perspective and a change perspective. Do you want to cover that, Brenda?
Yeah, so I do believe that we're ahead of the VMSs. They're coming behind us. They're not actually advisory. So as an internally managed program, we don't have an MSP. So we have a very skilled team, very mature internal in-house team, operations and strats, both sides. But we kind of think that we know it all too, So we tried Italy. We spent 6 months trying to figure out invoicing in Italy. And it turns out you just can't do it.
Yeah.
You just have to allow them do their process and then get it back into the system at the end. But if we had some kind of advice, we mightn't have spent that 6 months going. There's 150 line items coming out of different types of payments. We got it all in the system. We got it all set up. And then all of a sudden, VAT is a problem. How long it takes to invoice. They have all these strict guidelines that they have to invoice by the 12th of each month. And
Right.
and then anyone I spoke to here, they're like, oh no, we didn't even try that. So we were so close,
Yeah.
but we didn't get there.
Yeah.
But we're still going. We're still live.
Well, you've ticked a lot of boxes there, it sounds like, Brenda. But it is challenging. And then you've got the invoicing requirements in Italy and other European Union
Absolutely.
countries, which adds
Government portals, all
Yeah.
yeah.
which adds additional complexity when you're rolling this out. From your seat, Brenda, where do you see the biggest opportunity for organizations to get global expansion right?
I think an awful lot of it is in the planning. So we've done now 2 years, and then we had this list of countries, and everybody's like, "Have you started? What are you doing?" And I just said, "Hold on a second now. We're not going to go any further until we do a little bit more due diligence as to what's actually happening. You can pull down the workers from your HR system and you can figure that bit out. But what systems are in place? How are we going to do it? Those things, a little bit more information, spend a bit more time planning, and then decide what you're going to do.
Yeah.
You know?
See a few nodding heads here, which is encouraging, Brenda.
Yeah, it's hard, like it's work.
Yeah.
We're honest, none of this comes easy.
I agree. And I think, I don't know if we should mention this or not, but I think oftentimes, no, Medtronic is USA headquartered. We work with many USA headquartered companies. And I think back at headquarters, there's often a view in the USA that global expansion is easy because it's pretty similar to the USA. And most countries, although Europe's a bit mad and all that, and APAC has all these different rules, that it should be in some ways less complex because there's a homogeneity there. Like, have you got a view on that, Brenda? Are you okay to touch on that? Would you agree with that viewpoint?
No, I'm US company, but yeah, I like it's to be fair, it's a lot more straightforward to do it in the US.
Yes.
And the team, we have this thing in Medtronic where you can't be saying back to the US, oh well, it's different over here. So I never start with that language, but it is different over here,
Yes.
and it is. There's lots of different laws. There's lots of different ways of doing it. So, you have to kind of be political about it, but you're the whole time training them. Like, they don't understand why unions would need to be, notified that you're going to do this, or why in France, for example, like, I'm fully prepared for a strike no matter what. No matter what we do, I'm fully prepared for a strike, especially in the manufacturing.
Yes.
When I went over there, like, they were showing me photographs of their barbecue that they had on their last strike.
Yeah.
And, it's probably because you changed the toilet paper or something, like they do. So trying to explain that to the US, they're, unless they come over and witness it, they think you're, making it up. So it's all of that. It's all of that kind of bringing them along on the journey as well. But definitely one size does not fit all.
Yeah, I agree. I think tackling the workers' council, the works council in some of the
Absolutely.
European Union countries is key. I remember one of our clients who's here, I won't name names, but a huge US headquartered aviation company, when we were rolling out our program in Poland, Netherlands, Sweden, in order to win those hearts and minds, we spent a lot of time with the Workers' Council, but we also spent a lot of time with the key stakeholders in each manufacturing site or each regional office. And that was everyone from finance to the local CEO, to the executive team, to the key business leaders, to the union leaders. And I remember we had a pitch in a room like this. There was maybe 200 or so people in Frankfurt. And listen, I'm 45 now, but I think that was about 10 years ago, and I wasn't maybe as polished, and I'm not saying I am polished now, but I remember being so intimidated to really showcase and bring this message to bear to such a diverse group of people that were in some ways hostile to the idea of an MSP, because in certain locations, such as Poland, at the time, MSPs weren't really a thing, right? There was a lot of confusion over what an MSP was, and people were so concerned about our suppliers, and are you going to jeopardize them, and are you going to annoy them, and we have to wrap our arms around them. But it was really time well spent, Brenda, to
Yeah.
your point earlier, to help communicate and change and win those hearts and minds. And I don't think the program would have been successful if we hadn't have done that.
No.
And we were so lucky to get that buy-in from the local CEOs in Poland and Netherlands and Sweden. It was great. Brenda, I want to touch on, there's been so much conversation around this in the market over the last couple of years around statement of work or services procurement. And I feel that maybe it's becoming the new total talent management that people are talking about, but maybe not everyone is doing or knows how to do it. We've noticed in some of our programs a lot of what we would describe as leakage from staff augmentation or contingent labour or extended workforce into the SOW sphere, really as a way to circumnavigate some of the governance and compliance rules that we've put in place. From SOW perspective, Brenda, what's your view? Is that something that you're working on in Medtronic at the moment, or starting to work on and starting to identify?
Yeah. So I suppose it's the hot topic and everybody talks about it. And every year we come here and we have all the same conversations. And I do believe that anyone who says that they have it completely under control, I'm like, really? Do you? You know, I see David down there now. We had a long conversation about this. We did get a new CFO. It's as simple as that. All spend across Medtronic. He just wanted to look at everything, basically lift up everything. So he named the project, and our team are in one stream of that. But all of a sudden, when you mention that project name to any VP down, they'll go, okay, what do you want us to do? Now, we've never had that level of buy-in before. We've always had pushback. We've always had escalations. You know, you're a blocker. You're trying to stop me getting that piece of business done. And, you know, you're just trying to actually renegotiate the rate and, you know, move the person, because it is a contingent labour hire actually hidden as an SOW. So, you know, there's a lot that can be done. I think we will be talking about this for a long time, but I think until you get in front of it and you have some kind of systems where hiring managers are one stop, you know, answer 10 questions and are sent in the right direction, because all we're all doing is trying to fix what was said, what was done, what has happened, and then you are a blocker, you know? And we really are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get escalated all the time.
Around the SOW piece?
Absolutely. Yeah. Dave works with me. We spend a lot of time on this. It's hard work. Leakage. Isn't that the lovely word? Dave?
Leakage.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. Leakage.
Leakage, yeah.
And do you think, guys, Brenda in particular, do you think it's possible to get your arms around this?
I do.
Right.
I do. But it's not going to happen overnight.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's training people to understand what an actual SOW is. And it's very straightforward. It's deliverables. It's a statement of work, a piece of work, deliverables, good luck. It's not a contingent that's going to sit there for 5 years.
Yes.
And we need them as part of our, you know, project. Yeah, you do. But are you going to convert them to Medtronic, or what are you going to do? Because you can't just continue this non-stop.
Understood.
Yeah.
And Brenda, I know we hadn't covered this, so forgive the question, but within your vendor management system, is there an SOW module where
We're starting it.
starting it? Oh,
Yeah. We're of US first.
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. It makes sense. But I think it speaks to the stakeholder theme that we've been discussing so far this morning about having that key stakeholder buy-in.
Absolutely.
You know, for the CFO to be driving this,
Yeah.
you're going to get buy-in across the business.
Yeah. But and it's driving it. And you have to be ready. And when they want to drive it, you have to go with it. Otherwise, you're going to miss the boat. And then we'll still be sitting here in 10 years' time having the same conversation.
Without naming figures, Brenda, like from an order of magnitude perspective, would it be your view that the SOW piece is much larger than the contingent labour?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So when we started, that was our business case when we started our global expansion. So we could see 1.7 billion in spend, and half of that was unmanaged.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. We're still tackling that.
Yeah. That's a high-class problem to have.
It is, yeah. Yeah.
But I don't think that's uncommon from speaking to some of your sector peers.
I don't think so.
Yeah. I think this is maybe the final frontier that could be that organizations need to tackle. But hopefully we're not talking about it in 4 or 5 years, that there's some really workable solutions. And we've seen some within some of our clients that have built almost like a recommendation or decision engine that sits outside of their VMS, that's within their ServiceNow or their Salesforce environment, where the hiring manager, she or he, can go in and essentially put in the requirements, and then that will decide and determine whether it should go to staff augmentation, stroke contingent labour, or PAYE, a fixed term, or to statement of work, and then that has a different routing and approval process. So it can be done.
It can be. And you know, you just have to be prepared to work with your partners to figure that out, because nobody has all the answers.
Yeah. It must be interesting though, Brenda, being on what I would describe crudely as the buy side, right? Because I would imagine that a lot of the statement of work providers, of course, you've got the system integrators, the much smaller ones, but you probably got quite large, the likes of maybe EY or Accenture and Deloitte, and typically they have good relationships with the C-suite, right? Which is why they often become embedded within
Yeah.
organizations. Do you see that as a challenge, Brenda, maybe to tackle just because they are so embedded within organizations?
Should be careful how I answer.
We-
Yeah,
Yeah,
I do.
I do. Yeah.
But
I think
it's
that's
a
fair.
problem. I
Yeah.
trust them. Like,
Yeah.
be honest. Yeah, God, I don't know who's going to listen to this, but I'll be honest.
Yeah.
We know more about contingent labour in our program than they do.
Yes.
So they can come in as advisors, but most of the time they're just looking for information as to how we run it.
I see.
Yeah, that's my take on it, and I won't give it. But like this, the business think, oh, we'll just throw the money at them and they'll come in and fix it.
I'll fix it, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating the lack of governance around this, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not in your company in particular, but just
Yeah.
generally speaking.
Yeah.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in this space. I know for many of the service providers, ourselves included, are trying to solve for that. But anyway, this isn't you don't want to hear about us. This is really about you, Brenda, and your experience and your advice. So Brenda, we're going to touch briefly on the regulatory complexity, but I think many people are familiar with what's going on in the Netherlands already. There's 6 major legislative changes coming up there over the next 3 years. All of them are material to how extended workers, contingent workers, and suppliers provide their services. And also there's a change to the licensing and regulatory regime in the Netherlands. So it's just something to be aware of. Brenda and I and CXC and Medtronic spent a long time getting the program right for the Netherlands. There was a major legislative change there in 2020. I think it went live January 1st, 2020. It was called the WAB legislation, and really affected how temporary employees were engaged and managed in Netherlands. And we had a significant amount of change and cost pressure around that, Brenda, but I think we overcame that together. But Brenda, anything you care to share just for the audience around dealing with this regulatory complexity and change, not just in the Netherlands, but like you're in so many countries now. You're live in 8 countries since we last spoke. None of them are straightforward, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
In Europe, France, Italy, and others. Any advice or experience you care to share with the audience today?
I'll just let Dave come up here and talk. Because he's been working tirelessly on it. Look, the Netherlands, the cost has significantly increased now. I see Tanya down there. We were working with her organization to try and figure out, who's going to take the hit. Can we share the hit? Because it's significant when it comes down to, all of a sudden it's everything there, the entitlements. And, you had asked me, do I think that that's going to, expand across Europe or EMEA? And I do.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it afterwards and I was like, yeah, I think these changes are coming. We did think IR35, though, for example, would go into Ireland, and it hasn't.
That's true.
God, it hasn't. But some of those things you expect,
Yes.
oh God, that's going to happen next, and it doesn't. And then other ones just hit you from the side and you're like, okay, now we have to work with this. So those are the things when you're trying to expand a program, you're trying to run a program, and then all of a sudden something else happens and then you have to deal with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
yeah.
I think the regulatory complexity in Europe is fascinating, though, and it's a solvable problem, but it's challenging nonetheless. And it's challenging for the reasons you've said, Brenda, but also the way the EU bring out their directives and their acts. So, for example, the EU AI Act is actually problematic for staffing and recruitment providers from a matching perspective. So, just some dates for the back of your mind. 1st of August of this year is really important. In terms of how staffing companies operate in the European Union from a matching perspective. So that's just a date for your diary, just to consider that and talk about it. You had the payments, equal pay directive, the EU directive on platform workers, which is being transposed in each European Union country at the moment. And there's going to be different flavors of that, but that has potentially a lot of unintended consequences for both the end user of contingent workers, but also the service providers of the intermediaries as well. UK Umbrella Act is now in force. Everyone is probably aware in this room around that, although
Yeah.
that's less of a problem for the end user and more a problem for the actual umbrella company. So just some things to track. The other interesting thing is, I think we tracked 59 separate legislative changes in Spain, all relating to employment and labour law in the final quarter of 2025. So if I was sitting in your seats, guys, it's almost impossible to keep up with this stuff. We're the compliance company and we're struggling with it. That's our sort of bread and butter, as my grandmother would say. So, but anyway, just to flag some of those.
But I'll give you one positive on it.
Thanks,
From our perspective, the pay parity laws really help us
Yes.
because we can get breakdown. We can really see what we're paying.
Yeah.
Whereas in the US, in a lot of it, they can't get them. They won't share.
Yeah.
Whereas, we have to. So
Yeah. There's
it's
a
great.
legal requirement there. It is great.
It does, yeah. It really helps.
And Brenda, I think we've touched a lot today on stakeholder buy-in, and maybe doing it to death a bit. But from your perspective and from our discussions, none of this really works without the stakeholder alignment and the stakeholder buy-in. From your experience, where do programs typically fall down, right, without that? You seen anything?
Yeah, I think going back to that India example, like where we, here's the program, use it.
Yeah.
They had a full way of managing the contingent workers in that particular site, which was a big one, and like we've just had an awful lot of resistance, so you can say it's a global program. It's, are you used to using Medtronic systems? Because that it got to that stage where I was like, what is going on here? But it's the change piece, and they didn't want to have to use the system. Somebody was doing it for them.
Yes.
And it's a self-service tool and they have to get in and use it. So it's huge. I think there's a trip coming.
You can't beat it. You'll have it. You'll have.
Yeah, and it's not their fault. They've
Yes.
the way they've always been working and done an awful lot of hiring in this space. So,
Yeah.
no.
And Brenda, some of our audience, I'm sure, will have external MSP partners or programs, and some might have internal programs or are thinking about moving towards an internal program. And of course, there's often debate and pros and cons around this, right? But from your experience, Brenda, and I think you're 8 years into it now,
Yeah.
how do you reflect on that decision today when Medtronic moved from having an external provider, I think for like 10, 15 years, to that in-house internal model? What's your thoughts on it?
I think you really get a lot more buy-in because you're a Medtronic employee when you're going asking for information. You have a lot more access to information. You have a lot more access to, pay rates, stuff like that can't really be shared.
Yeah.
And it just works a little bit better. Whether we should be in HR or whether we should stay in procurement is the $1 million question.
Yeah.
But we have so many different hats.
Yeah.
I did have a HR leader say to me once, "You're very good at this." I was like, "Good at what?" And she said, "One day you're HR, one day you're, procurement."
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, well, I'm HR when they invite me to their Christmas party." But you just you get a lot of buy-in. That's definitely my opinion. And even for ourselves, it's not nice always being the provider in a company because it's, just fix it. Whereas, if you're a part of the organization and the culture, you have an awful lot more to back you.
Yes. And I think, Brenda, it's fair to say the track record that you and the team and your team have created, it speaks for itself in terms of the savings and the benefits that you've brought in for Medtronic. Is that fair to say? That gives you a bit more cachet as well.
Yeah, I should have talked about that.
Yeah.
We do save a lot of money.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. But on the flip side, it's the resources then, if you had an MSP, you could say, just go do this and you resource it. Now you're going to pay for it.
Yes.
But, for us to get resources, it's a bit of work. But we're getting there. Our team is expanding all the time. So Yeah, that's good.
It's been a real success story, Brenda.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say, not
Mhm.
just in terms of the savings, but the amount of countries that you're now live in, and I believe there's more to come. Um, what?
Yeah. Peter Egan says you're not global until you're in every single country that you have a site. So I don't know how long that will take us.
Yes. You get 100.
Multicultural or multinational. Maybe that's what we are.
Yeah, fair play, Brenda. Oh, thank you. So Brenda, we're going to touch a bit on AI. I know AI is getting done to death. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty, and I think it's fair to say there's a lot of opportunity for enterprises and companies out in the market. So when we were prepping for this, Brenda, we were like, well, what are we going to talk about? We want to talk about digital labor and agents. We'll come on to that in a sec. But do you want to give your view on how you guys are using AI and what's your thoughts on it, Brenda?
Yeah, I didn't want to talk about it, Connor. So I'm not, I know you love it. So I have had a lot of thoughts about it. But yeah, Copilot, ChatGPT, do Medtronic use AI? We absolutely do, all the time. We've robots, digital surgery that, um, I even witnessed a robot doing a surgery on half a red pepper where it was called a pepperectomy, where they were taking the seeds out of the pepper. So I was like, this is AI. Yeah, I can talk about AI. But I heard a very good story last night, actually. And I don't know if any of you have heard of bike face. Did you hear this story last night, Tanya? Yeah. So basically, when the bike was invented, the men didn't want the women having freedom and going off on bikes. So they told them they'd get bike face from, cycling around, which is what we all want now. But it's that scaremongering. Like, I personally, I'm not afraid of AI. I use it every day in work. I think it has just totally enhanced everything we do. Copilot is fantastic. It's really, instead of me taking notes and whatever. And, everyone says, oh, but the notes, like, just read through them and, doctor them. But at least you're getting the basis,
Yeah.
instead of writing it down and then having to type it up again or send it, I do. Yeah. But we don't have agents in our program.
No, that's
I don't know how we're going to figure that one out, but,
Well, it's interesting, the rise of the agents. So looking at some of the research from Gartner and whatnot, they looked at large global enterprises, and 90% of the respondents to their survey all said that they were deploying or had deployed digital agents across their businesses, either through their in-house software development teams or through external third-party providers. I'm sure you're all familiar with the names. I don't need to name them. And that I find that interesting, first and foremost, for the following reasons, because digital agents and digital labor starts to become more pronounced and prominent in organizations. That has a potential negative or knock-on effect on jobs, right? And ultimately, most of us in the room here are involved in some way, either matching jobs in terms of matching people with opportunity, bringing extended or contingent workers into our organizations, bringing suppliers of human labor or human capital into our organizations. And our jobs are very much around the governance, compliance, and risk around that. And my concern is, as there's more digital labor, there's likely to be less human labor, right? And of course, there's a big debate among economists and political commentators and governments around that at the moment, but no one has really squared the circle. And if you look at what's happening in the tech sector at the moment, most of the companies in that sector are highly profitable. Yes, their CapEx spend is going up on digital agents and AI frontier platforms, but the job losses or reductions in forces there are significant, and I think that's understating it somewhat. So if it's happening in highly profitable companies, it's likely to happen in less profitable companies, because if you can do more with less people, i.e. through agents, you're going to choose the agents, unfortunately, because most companies operate on a profit motive basis. So that's why I'm interested in that. And the second reason I'm interested in this is, well, how can we as service providers or as business leaders in this sector start to manage digital labor and digital agents, right? And I think there's an opportunity to bring some governance, compliance, and risk around that. So I'm both terrified about potential more job losses, but I can also see the opportunity to get our arms around this, similar in the way that we're trying to get our arms around SRW, that many of us have been successful around getting our arms around contingent labour or extended workers. So I think it's an exciting and scary time, but I think whoever can come up with the platform or the technology to manage digital labour directly or or providers of digital labour will have a really compelling business over the next number of years. So watch this space, guys. Brenda, just in terms of closing our conversation out, if you had to leave our audience with one key takeaway from your experience over the last 8 years and some of the wins and the challenges that you've had, is there anything you'd care to leave our audience with today?
I think from our perspective, it's kind of buckle up because it's just not going to slow down. It's just growing at a pace, the expectations. I think these programs are really, really becoming a huge part of the business. In Medtronic, the stats are, like 45% of Medtronic employees come from contingent labour. But everybody forgets about that. You go into rooms and you mention contingent labour and they kind of glaze over. Oh, here they go again. Nobody wants to talk about it. But it's huge. It's huge spend. It's huge numbers. Whether we're going down digital, we will, but you'll still always have that element. So I think, even in another 12 months, our landscape is going to be very different, particularly for us in Medtronic anyway.
Yeah, I agree. May we live in exciting times. Brenda, thank you so much. I always enjoy our conversations immensely, and I've particularly enjoyed this one, and I hope our audience have, and I find it useful. So, Brenda, thank you. Really appreciate it.
That's Connor.